Fishing trips anywhere, anytime. FishingBooker.com. Want to plan your next fishing trip without the hassle? FishingBooker.com is the best way to find and book a fishing charter anywhere in the world. Whether you're chasing trophy fish or just looking for a family day on the water, Fishing Booker makes it simple, fast, and secure. With thousands of experienced guides, verified reviews, and 24/7 customer support, Fishing Booker takes the guesswork out of planning. Visit FishingBooker.com and book your trip today. Fishing Booker. Fishing trips made easy.
Explore historic waterways in 2025 with Scenic on the most inclusive cruise on Europe's rivers. Enjoy up to 5 dining experiences, spacious suites, and butler service. Be immersed in the culture with enriching free choice excursions and exclusive events. Scenic, in a class of its own. Book now and save.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, brought to you by Huntworth. Huntworth gear for all types of weather, all types of terrain, all types of budgets. It's clothing that just works. Check them out at huntworthgear.com. And man, we are getting ready for the Total Archery Challenge. This week's episode, we have yet another Total Archery Challenge truck winner, AJ Kazimierzak, the Coffee Viking. Great guy. I've met AJ in person, oh man, I don't know, a dozen times now. Always a super positive guy, just, great, very energetic individual, but super cool. And the way that this podcast has come about, I've talked to him a bunch of times about coming on the podcast, and it just, just is one of those things where the timing wasn't right or whatever. And we were talking amongst the Patreons, and it was like, well, you can't win it with one shot. And I thought, I'm pretty sure that AJ won the Total Archery Challenge truck paying for one arrow with one shot and got it in there. And so we kind of talk about like his journey and kind of what he's doing now, and how it all kind of stems from that one shot that kind of put him in front of all these different people, and was able to do that. So really super cool. I would say inspirational for guys that are going to the Total Archery Challenge, and considering if you can make that distance, if you can make a good shot out a little past 100 yards, it's something that's completely doable, and just one of those things. And if you're a good shot, it should kind of put that much more confidence in you, to the fact that you can do it as well. But yeah, so a couple of things here. So speaking of tack and this 111-yard shot, the Muskegon Bowman Archery Club is going to have their 3D course set up on the 29th, and they have an event coming up, which is going to be on the 31st. So May 31st, they're having a 3D shoot, and there's going to be prizes, but we do have a full-size Total Archery Challenge caribou, so that Reinhardt caribou, and it is going to be set up as one of our novelty shots, set up at 111 yards. So for you guys that are considering it, that you want to see how far it is, you want to see about getting set up, we're going to have a novelty shoot. I believe it's going to be a cash payout for that. So check that event out if you haven't been. The Muskegon Bowman's Club is at 2380 Central Road in Muskegon, Michigan, and that event is going to be taking place. Go over to their Facebook page. You can see more information. There is going to be an archery equipment swap meet, so you can bring your stuff, try to sell it. There are tables available. There will be people set up. You can set up in the parking lot with whatever you've got. I will tell you that I believe it is mainly traditional archers who are going to be going to this one. And they're not going to be making that long of a shot. We're trying to get more people in, obviously, get more awareness for the club. And this is a pretty good way to do that when guys are getting set up for tack. So we're putting it out there. So there's going to be, a lot of different gear, but we would encourage you to go, bring your stuff, sell, swap, trade, whatever. And like I said, that's going to be happening. I believe that's going to be May 31st. And the course will be set up on the 29th. So that being said, one arrow is all it takes to win that truck. Yeah, so I know some of the Patreons are going to be out there. I got to work that day, so I'm not going to be there, but it's going to be a great event. And we got to give some shout outs here through the podcast to our sponsors, Huntworth, Latitude Outdoors. You can save BHC for 15%. Their outlet is closed. Everything is sold out from there. So the codes are back up again. You can save 15% by going over there using codes BHC. Big Shot Targets, you can use code BCP for 10% as well. Painted Arrow, BHC 15% to save on their stuff. And if you're not following along with their Instagram, they've got some reaction videos to a lot of the shots that have been submitted using their mounts, and really, really cool stuff. So definitely get over there, take advantage of that 15% off. And then for the Patreons, Genesis 3D, I got to get talking to Austin because he's now full-time with Genesis 3D, and got to get him on the podcast to talk more about that and kind of what he's doing. But he has a code for Patreons, so something to think about. And our friends at Zinger and Canati always come through for us. Going to be shooting zingers at the Total Archery Challenge out there to 100 yards. Good arrow flight. I actually just shot my compound for the first time at distance, and arrows are holding good at 80. So looking forward to that. But if you ever thought about wanting to give them a try before hunting season, Total Archery Challenge is a great chance to do that. We're going to be doing our cookout Saturday night as we usually do. We have some wild boar that we're going to be smoking, along with pulled pork and all that other stuff that we normally do. If you've been to Boyne before, you know where to find us. You basically can't miss us. So you got any questions about that, reach out. But this episode, super fun one. You guys are going to enjoy it. As always, thanks for listening. All right, everybody. Adam back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. And today we're going to have a fun one, but I'm going to start this off even without introducing him because if you were ever at the Crystal Mountain Total Archery Challenge, and you may have seen this hot blonde up against the truck, you know, long blonde hair, tight pants, shirt tucked in, and you're sitting there and you're kind of, you know, admiring from afar, you know, made a couple swipes back and forth. And then all of a sudden this hot blonde turns around and has about an 18-inch beard. That would be the Coffee Viking, AJ Kazmierczak here. I don't know if anybody listening has done that, but just know that we watched you for many passes. And unbeknownst to AJ, I think I told him that in PA, and he was like, "No way." He goes, "I do wear kind of tight pants." So yeah, that's the Coffee Viking here. How you doing today, AJ?
We weren't kidding when you said we were going to have fun with it, dude. That, without a doubt, the best intro I've had to a podcast. That was hilarious. Dude, I'm doing well. That was funny. I've got some buddies that work some different shows with me, and they rag on me to no end. But my fallback is that I grew up this skinny kid with abs, so nothing ever fit me properly. So now that I've worked hard for it, I'm like, you know what? I've worked hard for this. I'm going to wear the tight pants and the tight shirt, and it is going to be what it's going to be. But I will tell you, you are not the only person that has happened to, and I find it hilarious every single time.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's like taking the Huntress to like a new level, because we don't usually see that. You know, we see the, you know, the Josh Bomars and the, you know, that sort of outlandish behavior, I guess, from the hunter side. But yeah. That was just hilarious. So I thought I would share.
Well, see, that's the thing. I realize I've got, you know, I don't have a pretty face. So in order for me to compete with the Huntresses, I've got to grow my butt and then wear those tight pants. And that's what we got to do.
Oh, man. So A little bit of backstory on you. So, how did you end up in the like hunting industry or becoming a huntress of sorts?
Actually, that it's hilarious because I'm a big believer in like domino effect, and if doors are open, you should walk through them, see what's on the other side. I actually got into the industry by way of winning the Total Archery Challenge truck. I mean, if you want, I can give that full story, but basically the short end is, went to Michigan. The last year they had it at Boyne Mountain. I know they're coming back this year, but the last year at Boyne Mountain, I believe, was COVID year. Went there, fell in love with Total Archery Challenge. 2021, the only people that could go were me and my buddy Swope, and we're shooting the course. We go down, we're throwing money at the novelty shots. He shot for the truck. At the time, there was a African safari hunt at 47 yards for $5. I'm an opportunity cost guy, so I'm like, I can throw 3 shots to go to Africa or 1 shot for the truck. So I was content staying there. My buddy walks over. He says, hey, you have to shoot for the tack truck. I just paid for your ticket. So I said, all right, I'll let it fly. And then before the podcast, we were talking about it. I somehow, with my combination and configuration of bow setup and arrow and sight, I was running a vertical double pin, and I could get my top pin to 100 yards. And by the grace of God, the second pin was exactly 11 yards difference. And so I wheeled it back to 100, slid up, and as I'm getting ready to go, a local guy walks past and he goes, hey, it's windier on the hill, hold left about 6 inches. And he disappears, and I never see him again, but I owe him a huge thank you, because with 1 shot, I was able to get in for the tack truck. Swope and I, we were having a great time. I'm taking pictures in front of the truck. I'm trying to manifest it as much as possible because I believe in that aspect. Few months go by. My wife and I are at a concert in Put-in-Bay, Ohio. You have to take a ferry to get there. We leave the concert. I take my phone off airplane mode, and I immediately am getting blown up. My brother calls as I'm looking through stuff. I'm like, what's going on? He goes, dude, you just won the tack truck. Hang up, look at social media. So then I basically drop down and freak out. I know for a fact everyone on this ferry boat had to think I was on hard drugs, but I wasn't even drinking at the time. And so, long story short, end up winning the tack truck. Following year, I'm at Crystal Mountain, Michigan with some other buddies, and I'm talking through things, and I'm talking with Sean, the owner of Total Archery Challenge, and we had a great conversation. One thing led to another. I'm a big mouth per se. I'm a big believer that the worst someone can say is no. So I throw out to him, hey, why don't you let me run your social media? And because I could tell that he wanted to focus on the logistics of it and stuff like that. And one thing led to another. I end up working for Total Archery Challenge for, I believe it was 1.5 or 2 years as their social media guy. Developed an amazing relationship with Sean and his family, an amazing relationship with Rob Chalinsky, who does a ton of behind the scenes work. All of the workers, Connor, Carter, Caden, the Brockhouse boys, I have nothing but good things to say about all those guys. But that then led to more doors opening via First Phorm, via Lone Wolf Custom Gear, via Bear Archery. The truck was a Bear truck. I ended up getting surprised with a Bear bow when I picked it up. As out of respect for them, I set my bow down, picked that one up, went to Maryland, shot a really good Sika stag. It's actually, I don't know if you can see it, but it's behind me. He's a little far away. And shot a really good 9-pointer in Ohio. Went back to Bear Archery. Once again, worst thing they can say is no. And I said, hey, how does it work with pro staff and shooting? I'd like to continue shooting for you guys. I love the bows and the USA made, the fact that there's bows in every category. And so now I shoot for bear archery as well. And that's how a lot of my relationships developed going into the industry. And a lot of it was more so from the standpoint of, I just want to get to know these individuals. People don't realize that the individuals that work in the industry are some of the greatest people you'll ever meet, because for the most part, we believe in, there's a space for everybody. We want more hunters into it. I want to see other people be successful, things along those lines. And so I got into the industry from the standpoint of building and developing relationships, becoming friends with everybody, and then opportunities arose after that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that that's, I always say with any of this stuff, and especially guys who are trying to get into the industry, and I wouldn't say that I'm like in the industry, but dealing with people in the industry, I always say, like, you must be present to win, right? So I can only imagine going around with the Total Archery Challenge. I mean, the setup, the tear down, the getting there early when nobody's there, the staying there late, having drinks, beer, coffee, whatever, depending on the time of day. And you're developing these relationships, and they can see the hard work that you put in for, whatever you're doing. And I think that just leads to, a real, litmus test. I talked to Ron Boehm from the Hunting Dog podcast long ago when I first started this thing. And he said it's the duck blind test. He said, can I sit with you in a duck blind, freezing my balls off for X amount of hours and not want to choke you?
Right.
If you can do it, if we can get over that barrier, then we can maybe work together or whatever. So before you headed up to that first Total Archery Challenge, when you won the truck that you had just described, like, had you shot other Total Archery Challenges? Like, where were you at in your archery journey? Because I think people, the way that this podcast popped up, and you and I talked multiple times, over the years, and, but it was like in our Patreon group, they were like, well, you can't win it with one shot. And I'm like, I think you can.
Yeah.
So where were you at in your archery journey going into that point?
Yeah, no, dude, still to this day, I'm just a bow hunter. I'm a bow hunter that likes to have fun. I like to test my skills as much as anybody else. For me, I saw Total Archery Challenge pop up. I believe, I think last year was the 11th year. I believe when I went, it was either year 4 or 5 for Total Archery Challenge. And I had heard about this awesome thing, and it was like basically similar to putt-putt on the side of a mountain, but instead of it being putt-putt, you're shooting your way down like animal targets, and it's on a ski resort. And I'm like, this sounds so cool, because those of us that live in the Midwest, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I live in Columbus, Ohio. Those of us that live in the Midwest, we don't have as sprawling of land as those out west. There's some people out west that in their backyard, they can stretch out to 120, 130 yards just for fun. My backyard, on my best day, I can get out to 42 yards. And that's if I cross the street and stand in the other neighbor's yard, So to hear about a event that allows you to test your skills, allows you to stretch out past the standard 40 yards, I was like, man, this sounds like a really awesome event. So I orchestrated it and got my brother, my buddy Swope, my cousin, and one of his buddies, and we went up and we had a great time. It was incredible. But yeah, I would still since then, I've picked up tips, tricks, knowledge to become a better archer. But at my heart and soul, I'm still just a bow hunter. I've never once shot a 3D tournament. I've never done the Vegas style shoots. I've never done any of that kind of stuff. I have a lot of respect for it. I think a lot of it is really cool. I'll watch archery when it's in the Olympics and stuff like that. But bow hunting is what I love.
And so how did you get into bow hunting and like being passionate about it? Because I think if I recall, you were like a city kid in your youth.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was a city slicker through and through. In middle school, I was the kid that was wearing the Jordan shorts underneath the ripped Hollister jeans. Most people in and around their 30s understand what I'm saying. You know, I had the puka shell necklace. I mean, I was about as city as they came, but I had family in the country, and during summertime, we would spend more time down there at Grandma and Grandpa's pool, hanging around, riding four-wheelers. We would spend more time down there than we were even at home. But I also played travel baseball, so it was a balancing act of sorts. But long short, when I went into high school, 8th grade going into freshman year, our school district lost sports. So at the time, I was playing 3 sports. I'm like, I'm not doing this. So I went to school where my cousins went to school, which is a small rural high school. I tell everybody it's surrounded by 3 cornfields and woods on the backside. That's like where my high school was. And through that, I started hanging out more and more with my older cousins. I'm an older brother, but I don't have an older brother. And so I looked at those guys and I just wanted to do what they did. I wanted to hang out with them, you know, and it was very much with them. They were in their early 20s. And so they didn't have a whole lot of responsibilities. So they would just go to work and they'd come back and they'd shoot bows. Well, I was coming out and just watching them basically. And so I was like, I'm very thankful for this. I told my cousin Bryce, I was like, hey, I want to shoot bows and hunt like you guys do. And he was like, all right, fine. Well, I'm super fortunate. I don't know if you've ever had him on or maybe you know him, but Bryce and Cody Schleich were best friends growing up. So Cody Schleich is very good friends with Jake Bush. They actually hunt similar ridge tops. There's a very mutual woodsmanship respect between those two. So I like to think I got a very good deal with who my hunting mentors were, because my cousin told me, he's like, hey, listen, if you're not able to stack arrows at 20 and 30 yards, I'm not taking you until you can do that, because his top priority was, being ethical and being respectful to that animal. So, I got all of that, how to treat the animal right. I got all of my skills from watching and listening and learning from Bryce and Cody. And then there was a handful of other guys mixed in there as well. But those two were like my biggest mentors getting into bow hunting. So I didn't even start bow hunting until I was 15, 16.
Okay. And so from that, when you mentioned Jake Bush, like ultimately you think of a style, right? So like the Jake Bush style, which I don't think that there's a whole lot of other guys that are have that level of, I don't know if it's like attention to detail or OCD, like where's that really fine line there. But so were you hunting public land, going out and doing all the scouting and all that from like an early age, or how did that progress?
So I actually didn't start hunting public land until a few years ago. Before that, and when I was learning, I was very fortunate. My grandfather owns a construction company, and he does a ton of work for farmers and landowners, pulling gravel in, digging ditches, cutting in water tile, different things like that. And so through that, there was a handful that he gained hunting permission from. My cousin Bryce, he also was in on this, and he knew some different areas and stuff like that. So I started out hunting private land, but it was never in the sense of food plots and cultivating the land and funneling deer. And like, we weren't doing any land management. We just, hey, you can hunt this land, no guns, no ground blinds, and you're not allowed to change the structure of the land. I live in Ohio, so we were allowed to put corn out and mineral out, but that was all the landowners were okay with. As the years went on, I then heard and found out about mobile hunting. You know, Cody Schleich, he does that on the public land side of things. And then Bryce, he was always looking for new innovations and things like that. So these guys would start buying the new stands and the lightweight gear and stuff like that. So then I started learning more and more about that. Then once I started going off on my own, you know, with the advancements of Onyx and the ability to find where the public land is easier and things like that, that's when I started kind of sprawling out and hunting different public land.
One thing that kind of sticks out to me with yourself and what you say in your story, and I've got a couple things written down here, but is like almost like a strange dichotomy, if you will, from like the outside looking in. And we can talk about the way that hunters view each other and how that pertains to like hunting styles, public, private, gear, all that stuff. But that dichotomy to me is, on one side, you have bear archery that you've already talked about, who, you know, they own that. I don't even want to say, I guess you could say they own like the entry level bow market, but they also, I feel like, own like the middle of the road market. There are very few bows out there that are, I would say, less than $700. And I'm not talking about like good bows. I'm talking about any bows.
Right.
There right now, you know, you're looking at that is like the basement, the bargain, the old technology from any of the quote unquote big bow companies. And it's wild to see that, you know, to even say that as Bear not being like a big bow company. But I think in the mind of, you know, when you talk about some of the stuff you talked about earlier with like target archery or Olympics or any of that stuff, like, you know, Darton, Matthews, Bowtech, Prime. And I would say like Prime isn't even like one that I would say is like a normal bow that you'd see like on a podium for indoor 3D or anything like that. And, you know, please correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, Bear, you don't see that. You don't see shooters, you know, you don't hear that talk. And then that dichotomy that I'm talking about is Lone Wolf Custom Gear, which this may offend you or may not, but I think it's like the reality is that they probably have like the most like aggressively negative fan base online. Like if it's not Lone Wolf Custom Gear, it's shit. If Andre DeQuisto says it, it's gospel. And there is no deviation from that. And that dichotomy to me is wild with you personally.
Yeah. So that's actually, it's, I love this conversation, right? Because I take pride in myself being someone that we can disagree. And from my standpoint, I'm still going to be friends with you. Like, if we have a different of opinion about whether it be gear or how to hunt or public versus private or whatever, I'm not going to oust you as my friend, you know? And so that's why that's actually it's funny you mentioned that, because I actually agree with you to the extent of some of the custom gear fans can be aggressive toward others. That being said, two sides to every coin. Some other individuals can be very aggressive towards custom gear, the DeQuistos, and anyone who likes the gear. And so that's kind of where Cody, one of the reasons Cody actually brought me in was from the relationship standpoint. So you and I have talked, but for those that don't know, I'm the media and event director for Lone Wolf Custom Gear now. This is what I do for my full-time career. But yes, I agree. In the past, it has always, not always, but in the past, it has been custom gear is in custom gear's lane, and they're going to stay in their lane, and nobody else is allowed to. It's like sitting at the cool kids table, you know? And the idea is that I want people to see that custom gear is just by hunters for hunters. And a lot of times that aggression from the standpoint of people who work with and around the company. Now, those that just love the gear, I can't speak to them, but those of us in and around the company, that aggression is actually passion. We're just very proud of what we do, the fact that it's American made, 40 years of innovation. We're still a family-owned company. We're using U.S. metal. That aspect, all of that is just passion. Now, that being said, individuals in the outdoor/hunting space, a lot of times it is do or die, black or white, I'm right, you're wrong. And that's where all of the Facebook back and forth arguments, yelling on forums, grown men acting like middle schoolers comes from. And that's what I don't like. If we're 30, 40, and 50-year-old individuals on social media yelling at each other because Joe in 7 states over bought a different brand than the brand I like, I mean, what are we doing? We've got way too much time on our hands if we're going to get into a knockdown, drag out argument on social media over something like that.
Yeah. So how do you, I don't know. 'Cause I think you're probably one of the only guys in the last 2 or 3 years that I've talked to that's like one of the like people involved with Lone Wolf Custom Gear. And I think it's just because there is maybe it's like a stigma that it seems like, and it may just be the people who support the brand, but it's just a very like, and I think some of the marketing is like that. It's like dark and ominous, like just almost negative, right? Yeah. I mean, and so it is, I don't even want to say that it's like a cool kids club because I mean, I joke about it all the time because, if you can't laugh at yourself, then, what are you even doing? But, saddle hunting, like lift, run, shoot, you're kayaking in, mobile, all these things, right? And then it's Lone Wolf Custom Gear, and it's like, well, our stuff is the best, and if you don't have it, or there's nothing better, like it's not for the poors, like you're not one of us, just all of that. So, in talking with you, I feel like, I mean, I've talked to you a lot in person. Like this is weird talking this way, but
we're actually real life friends that just happen on social media.
Yeah. So in that, like, one of the things I have written down here is ego, and I think that for you, that is something that you've like thrown out the window, and it doesn't come into play because I think some of these guys, whether it's the guys online or even some of the guys that I would say take hunting to a different level. And I don't mean like as far as success, but I think they find it as like their identity. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's kind of like where that ego comes in. And if you're attacking my tree stand or my arrows or my bow, then you're attacking what it is to be me, and I'm not going to stand for that. Like, how have you, I guess, like, pushed that aside in all the dealings with, I mean, if anybody's going to have an ego, you're, the First Phorm athlete of the year or whatever, you won the truck for TAC, and now you work with and are with the big bad wolf. Like, I mean, how do you put that aside or whatever? I guess, and deal with the other egos in the room too.
There's some balloons going on my screen. 2 things. One, I was am extremely fortunate. I grew up with a dad who, from a positive mindset, instilled in me that I will never be the biggest, the fastest, or the strongest. So I have to work harder than everybody. And that was prevalent to me from the time I was 6 years old, still through to this day. And so how that has evolved for me, and you ask, how am I able to put the ego aside? For me, it's easy because I know there is always somebody better than me. You know, I'm never going to stop working. I'm always going to work to be a good husband, good father, a good hunter, good from a fitness and health standpoint. I'm always going to work to build those up. But I know that there's always a bigger fish. There's always somebody better than me. And that I look at as a good thing, because that allows me to make sure that my ego never gets out of hand. And so working with different individuals in the space, you kind of ask how I juggle and balance that. It's one of those things where I will always, and make no mistake, I'm not saying anything here that I wouldn't also say to my bosses, aka Cody and Andre. It's one of those things where I do a lot of letting individuals talk, and I'm not talking about them specifically, just any outdoor conversation I have. I intentionally try to let individuals talk, and then either what I'll do is I try to play devil's advocate, and I'll say, listen, I totally understand where you're coming from. What if, and then I'll pitch it from a different perspective, or maybe John sees it this way and Tommy sees it that way. What's funny is through all of this, right, through this space, the outdoors, any success that I've had, one of my proudest moments is actually the fact that I was able to get Jake Bush and Lee Ellis to sit down in my coffee shop and have a podcast together, right? People will tout that Lee is the king of suburban hunting, and people will talk about how amazing Jake Bush is at early season public land whitetails. And so that's actually one of my proudest moments, because with those two individuals, super high in the space, not a single ego in the room. And it's because of the fact that there's a mutual respect through all of that. And so that's something that I always try to keep in check, is that there's always somebody better than me, so I can always work harder. So I have not done anything to warrant having an ego. And I also believe that egos eventually will be the downfall of individuals.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The one thing I would think about, like yourself, the thing you just had mentioned with like Jake Bush and Lee, is they don't strike me as guys who, and I've had, lots of interactions with Jake Bush and very few with Lee, but they don't strike me as guys who, like I said, identify as like
bad boys.
Well, but that the deer is their identity. Like if without the deer, they're nothing. Without hunting, they're nothing.
Yeah.
Like I think it's just part of who they are, and it's made them, kind of pushed them along in their journey. But I think those two guys could probably be successful in anything that they did. And they wouldn't struggle one bit to go apply that somewhere else, where I think a lot of the ego is like people who just, I deal with it like with some of my friends, like who from the Marines, where they were important in the Marines because they had a rank.
Yeah.
And then, or they, it's the peaked in high school thing, but it's something that I know personally is that everything goes back to just like, oh, I just wish I was back there. Like that's when they had respect because of X.
Right.
And I think that in the hunting world, that's where you get into like some of the, it translates to dollars at some point, but you get into the Chris brackets or wherever, where you get like the pressing, and now you're bending rules and things, because if you don't have that next deer, like nobody cares. And I think that that's an important thing for people to understand, is that like, I bet you can't remember the buck that Cody killed 3 years ago.
Right.
But I bet you if you were there and had a beer with them and drug it out, you'd remember that experience. And I think in our industry, that's the thing, like what I like to do here is it's all about those experiences. That's why I like the Total Archery Challenge. For us, it's deer camp in June, and we get to see the same guys. We get to cut up. We get to do those things. and do I remember the targets that I hit? Like maybe one miraculous shot or something like that. But do I remember shooting in the rain? And do I remember, the blonde by the truck? Of course, those things.
Right. But no, I totally get what you're saying, man. I tell everyone, because I've gotten new guys into Total Archery Challenge. Actually, one of them is headed out to the West Virginia one this weekend. And the way I explained it to him is it is the greatest collection of archers in the country, because all of us are there for a common reason. We all hunt, we all shoot bows, and we all like to have a good time. And so regardless of what tent you walk to in Vendor Village, what target you're on, people shooting behind you, people shooting in front of you, you can have a fun conversation with anybody that you meet there. That's why I'm so pro Total Archery Challenge. I think it's, to your point, it is a breath of fresh air to an otherwise extremely intense industry.
Yeah, I try to think about that, because I feel like at our deer camp, like nobody, it's all like an exchanging of information, but it's very like inviting and all that. And so you're just trying to help everybody. I think that at the Total Archery Challenge, yes, everybody's there for the same thing. And I guess the point maybe you're trying to make is that it's just a giant conglomeration of like-minded individuals. So you automatically have common ground. But that's not to say you don't see somebody out on the course and you're like, oh my gosh, like might want to practice a little bit.
Yeah. No, I'm always going to be those bad apples, but that's why we've got the majority and the minority for every single piece of information. Fortunately, I have not had too many run-ins with those people. I've had far more good conversations than bad conversations.
So one of the things I have on here is discipline, right? I feel like it kind of goes along with the archery. It goes along with hunting, right? So you have to like do these things the same way every time. You have to put in the effort and all that stuff. But like going over to the, like what you do in the like First Phorm and like the fitness side, and it's, I brought it up with the hunting thing, but I didn't expect it to go this way. But thinking about it, like if you're the First Phorm athlete of the year and you just all of a sudden let yourself go and now you're, put on 40, 50 pounds and you're, the larger Viking,
right.
It was more like the protein shake Viking. And now it's the, McDonald's
beers and chips. Yeah.
Milkshake Viking. Like, how does that work with like, cause First Phorm is starting to do stuff like in the outdoors and trying to like motivate people to kind of, the hunter mentality, I think in the last 5 years, and I don't want to say mentality, but like maybe like the stigma or like the stereotype is that you're this Midwestern beer drinking guy. A lot of the Western hunting stuff has changed that, but you're a Midwest guy. And we're seeing more of this like fitness trending stuff. And that's been like a big pushback, is that like, well, you don't have to run 10 miles to kill a buck and all these things. So
yeah,
how do those two things line up?
To those individuals that say that, I would agree with you 100%. I'm not taking anything away from that. It is your prerogative to drive your four-wheeler to the base of your elevated blind, walk up 10 steps, sit with a rifle, and shoot a deer at 300 yards and drive the four-wheeler straight up to it. You are more than welcome to do that. However, if you take better care of yourself, and if you, watch your nutrition, you actually train properly, things along those lines. One, it's going to be way more enjoyable. Two, it is a fact that you will be able to be to get to where the deer are. We're seeing this surge now in our industry that, I was just listening to a podcast the other day about people are worried that we're going to a European style of hunting where it's a buy-in for everything. Well, as a domino effect, we see more people that are buying up hunting leases, which is then pushing more people to public land. Now, there are some plots of land that are 80 acres. You don't really have to be in that great a shape to cover 80 acres. But there's also plots of land in the Midwest that are thousands, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 acres, especially down in the South. There's some big tracts as well. And it's just a factual piece that if you are in better shape, you will be able to go further and get deeper on this public land, where the less in shape people or the more out of shape people can't get to or just won't get to because, it's a long walk or it's a long way up and down. And so anytime I have those conversations with people, when I start bringing up First Phorm and fitness and health and nutrition and things like that, I put that out point blank. You do not need to be in shape to kill a deer. However, it will help you in all facets of deer hunting if you take some sort of seriousness towards your health, nutrition, and wellness. Not to mention, a lot of individuals that deer hunt also have a wife, also have a couple of kids, and so don't you also want to be in good health for those people as well? Don't you want to stick around a little bit longer to see your sons and daughters kill 120, 150, 180 inch buck? I know for me personally, with my son Riggs, I'm itching to get him out into the woods. That's going to be one of my proudest moments, is taking my son hunting. I want to be able to, quote unquote, take my son hunting for as long as I possibly can. And quite frankly, the gas station roller dogs, Little Debbie's, and beer isn't going to cut it. So that's usually what I explain to people when I'm talking about health and wellness in the hunting space.
And so what is First Phorm doing in like the hunting space? Because I've a good friend of mine, Joe, I think you've hunted with him. But he's works with Jake and all the stuff. And he's saying, they're trying to get, First Phorm outdoors. I've met Jake a couple times. We've seen him at like the HHA Vortex events and stuff like that. Where does First Phorm fall into like the hunting space? What are they doing with that?
So basically, and this is where, right place, right time. I'm extremely fortunate. I came into First Phorm with Jake Arvold as my coach from headquarters. And he came to myself, Dale Beatty, and Jonathan, which is Redbeard Outdoors. And he was like, hey, I want to start an outdoors division for First Phorm. We're like, we're in. Let's do it. And the whole reason, and Jake tells this story way better than I do, is he knows that if his grandfathers on both sides took better care of their health, he would have still had them for 2 to 5 years. He's since lost both of his grandfathers, and that's kind of what spurred his reasoning behind it. I don't want to be the one that has to get left at the trailhead and, I'll catch up later. I don't want to be the one that can't get down to the fishing hole because of the fact that it's on a steeper incline than what I can handle. So the idea behind it is helping people get real long-term lasting results for their health and wellness. We're not selling seaweed wraps or, quick fixes or take this and lose 20 pounds tomorrow. That's not what First Phorm is about. First Phorm Outdoors is all about, we have the tools that will help you, but you have to put in the work to become a better outdoorsman, husband, father, wife, mother, the whole 9 yards. And so that's what First Phorm Outdoors is really selling, is we have the tools to help you become a healthier, better version of yourself.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, it's not a First Phorm podcast or anything like that, but I feel like, you're pretty well versed in that. And like I said, I've seen it a lot. And I think one of the funny things is like you say, like, we're not selling like seaweed wraps. It's like, I mean, you're selling energy drinks, some really good ones too. And the beef sticks are amazing.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. And that's one of the reasons why we promote those so heavily is you look at our energy drinks, you look at our meat sticks, you look at our level 1 bars, and you compare those 3 things to your gas station energy drink, a beef jerky stick, or a Little Debbie. That's what you're comparing back and forth. And our macros and our nutrition facts blow those other ones out of the water. There's no dyes in the energy drink. There's no, it's, I believe, 10 or 15 calories per drink, 200 milligrams of natural caffeine. There's actually a hydration matrix in our energy drinks as well, which is a lot of your minerals and your BCAAs and things like that to help make sure that you're hydrated while trekking through and things along those lines, rather than just here's 400 milligrams of caffeine, have fun with an elevated heart rate up in a tree stand. And so that's where we come in at the ground level to help break things down and say, although it is energy drinks, meat sticks, and bars, there's a whole lot more to the intricacy of it all than just what you see at face value. I've got my 2-year-old son, Riggs. He will eat a full First Phorm meat stick, and that's 20 grams of low temp processed real protein in that bar. He's 32 pounds, so he's already at almost his whole day's worth of protein with one snack stick. So yeah, it's the same style of what a lot of people are already getting from a gas station, but the health and wellness is way higher with the First Phorm stuff.
Yeah. And like I said, it's, it doesn't have to be about First Phorm, but like I said, it's just, that's another facet of the thing that, you've been able to do through this, essentially one shot, one archery shot.
Yeah.
So now shifting gears a little bit, what do you have coming up this year as far as like hunts and hunting seasons? And then you've got like the mobile roadshow events, which none of them are in Michigan to get this year is what I heard. And there's been some pushback about that.
Yeah, there has been some pushback. So for starters, what we've got is we're going to be in Total Archery Challenge, Pennsylvania, and we'll also be at Total Archery Challenge, Crystal Mountain. Unfortunately, we won't be at Boyne, just conflicting schedules and things like that. I'm extremely fortunate. My wife is actually a very successful wedding photographer, a very successful photographer that focuses on weddings. She does a lot more than that. But the thing with that, and the thing that her and I balance, is when's peak wedding season. Everyone in the Midwest loves their colors on the leaves. So it's September, October, November. So balancing that, balancing my work schedule, hunting schedule, things like that, there's a lot of moving parts. My August is completely booked. So it's the Whitetail Roadshow, which I dub as the most educational event that whitetail hunters can attend. We're going to be in Dalnega. I know I'm butchering that. Dalnega. Ben's going to kill me. Georgia. That'll be the first week of August. Then we're actually going to be at the Hunter Farm. The Hunter Podcast guys, they invited us out to their farm in Ohio. So that's going to be really fun. A lot of hands-on stuff there. Then we'll roll to Virginia, and then we'll finish up at Lone Wolf Custom Gear headquarters in Iowa. So first, second, third, fourth weekend in August, fully booked up with that. That will actually wrap up our events from the custom gear side for the end of the year. And then obviously we dive headfirst into hunting season. I'm crossing my fingers because I just put in, for the first time ever, buying out of state points and tags and things like that. I put in for Kansas. So I'll find out here in the next week or so, I believe, whether or not I drew for Kansas, which will be pretty amazing. And then I'm just going to focus on hunting here in Ohio, and then being a good dad and a good husband, making sure the wife and the kids taken care of. So right now, just potentially Kansas and Ohio. And then in January, myself and a few other guys in the space, we always go down to Alabama and go chase on some Alabama public, which if you've never done before, it will humble you very quickly.
Yeah. What's, so I've, obviously, Parker's down there in Alabama. They talk about the Alabama, the weird Southern rut stuff and all of that. What's it like going from being a Midwestern hunter down to the South and then being there in January, like temperature, like terrain, all that stuff?
Yeah. Well, dude, it's so cool because so I didn't realize it. My buddy Jacob Leishan, he's wildly intelligent, looks into all this. Alabama essentially obliterated their deer herd back in the day. They had to transplant deer from Michigan, the Carolinas, Ohio to essentially repopulate this state. Well, as a byproduct, a lot of those animals from all over, they retained their natural breeding behaviors. So usually from about mid-November through January, in somewhere in Alabama, you will be able to find rut behavior, which is just like so mind-blowing. Growing up in Ohio, it's like, this is the second week of November, this is the rut, good luck. But then to go down there and experience it, I mean, we've hunted different properties where it's been within probably 200, 250 acres. We're hunting big tracts, but within probably 2 to 250 acres, you've got river systems, you've got swamps, you've got river systems, you've got swamps, you've got big sprawling cliffs and bluffs, you've got farmland as well. It's one of those places where in a very short space, you can see a ton of different terrain and things like that. And that's one of the things that I love most about going down there is up here in Ohio, a lot of the hunting is either ag or hill country, and that's all you have to choose from. But when you get down there, you're in for a ride with all of the different options of terrain.
Yeah, I've heard about it, and it's just something, you hear about the Kansas, the Iowa, South Dakota, any of these like fun style hunts, and you don't really ever think about the South. I don't know. It doesn't seem like a big buck area. It doesn't sound, it doesn't get much love. So I was just curious from that standpoint, like what it was like for you. What's the climate like going down there from January up and what's crazy to me is like the differences just from Ohio to like where I'm at in Michigan. Like I remember it was 2-3 years ago. We went down, we were going to scout in late February, early March, Southern Ohio, like areas that you're really familiar with. And we were just losing our snow here. I mean, so we were like, oh, it's a little bit south. We'll go there. Like, we'll still be able to find the deer trails. It's going to be good. We went down there. It was like 80 degrees. I'm like, what the hell? There's no snow. There's no nothing. So what's it like going from January in Ohio down to Alabama in that time frame?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible because of the fact that we actually, this past year specifically, we kind of brought the Midwest down to Alabama. So when we were down there, in previous years, we always go the first or second week of January, but in previous years, it would be 40 degrees in the morning, and then it would be 80 degrees in the evening, which, like you said, you're sweating your butts off, going through, trudging through, hauling gear, all of that. But then this past year, we went down there and it was steadily about 35. It probably got even colder because the snow stuck. So it was probably 20 to 25, and it would get up to 55, 60 in the evening. But as soon as that sun went down, the temperatures would plummet as well. I shot 2 does in the snow while we were there. But it was still really crazy because there was one morning we woke up and we had probably 4 or 5 inches of snow where we were hunting. But then a day later, it was completely melted off. No snow anywhere except for maybe in like little drain patches. So let's put it this way. I have a tote of camo. All of it gets loaded into the truck bed because you never know what the South is going to throw at you.
And so for you in Ohio being like a $1 state, right? How do you, because you're like, oh, well, maybe I'll hunt Kansas. Does that cause you to be a lot more selective for the deer? Because that's one thing here in Michigan, we're $2 and we're always arguing about like, should we do APR? Should we do $1? Should we do this or that? Like, does it change your focus to the specific deer you're going after? Because I couldn't imagine only having like, being able to hunt just $1 and then being like, oh, I'm just going to hunt one state. I think just because it's been, over a decade of hunting, multiple states and, even if I'm not a very good hunter. So like, it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm targeting this or I'm killing deer, left and right. And especially back then, but still it's been over a decade that I've been hunting out of state, chasing multiple deer. So
yeah, it definitely affects me for sure. And I think it does it more so subconsciously than anything else. I haven't really put much thought about it until just now when you asked that, but I actually had a situation happen this past year in Ohio where if I was in a $2 state, it would have been a different outcome. I was hunting a piece of public, beautiful, typical 8-point, walking straight to me. But it was second week of October, and I knew that there were a couple of 150s, 160s elsewhere. And so I elected to pass that deer because of having that one deer mentality brain. And ultimately I came up empty-handed in Ohio this past season. Now, if I had 2 tags, if I was in Michigan, I would have shot that deer every single day. But does that go over to other states? Yeah, I think it does. But I also do my best to do some research and see what I should expect in these different states, right? I'm not going to go to Alabama and hold out for 180, 190 inch deer. I'm also not going to go to Iowa and hold out and shoot the first 115 that I see roll through. And so I don't care what anybody else shoots. People that's their prerogative. I'm in no place to judge what other people are doing as long as it's legal and ethical. For me personally, I try to do research, figure out what a common size is, and I will base my hunting and what I'm going after off of that. There's also a million other factors, right? Am I going down to Kansas for a month, or do I have a long weekend 4 or 5 days out there? That also plays into a factor. This industry tries so hard to be black and white, but in reality, it's a ton of shades of gray with making decisions and why someone does something and things along those lines. So yeah, the $1 and $2 thing has definitely affected me, but I always try to keep a level head about it.
So let me ask you this: for yourself, like we'll just start because you said you're going to hold off for a 180, 190 inch deer, blah blah blah. How many of those have you killed?
I have killed, my biggest deer ever is 179 inches.
Okay. And is that normal for you, or is that an outlier?
No, that I would say that's an outlier. I'm thinking through, if I had to put all of my bucks together from Ohio, it would probably average 140, 145 maybe.
Okay. And so, like, when you go to Kansas, what are your goals? And does that change as the week, month, day goes on?
You always hear the old adage of, don't pass on the first day what you would shoot on the last day, which I always try to keep in the back of my mind. I honestly can't tell you like a number that I'm going out to chase. What I will tell you is how I'm going to approach it. So let's say I draw Kansas, okay? Whatever area I end up drawing in, I'm going to then go and I'm going to take to the forums. I'm going to take to the historical data. I'm going to look up, bucks taken in X county or X zone. I'm going to look at the relevancy of it all, because I don't really care a whole lot about data from 1940s and, or even 1960s, whatever. I'm looking for updated data to then give me an idea of what should I expect going out there. I've also got some friends out there that they have some private spots and a big track of public as well. So whether I'm on private or public, whether I'm going out and, it might be that I go out and they're like, dude, this one buck is out there. We've all already tagged out. We think you should go hunt this track. That changes everything as well. Or are we going and we're going to take the boats and float this river channel and get on a piece of public and just try to find some hot sign? That buck might be completely different from the buck that I'm targeting if they say, hey, dude, we found this one. He's out here. Like, come out. Let's go get him. And so I'm looking at all of these different variables while I'm getting ready to head out there. And then hopefully, as if I draw Kansas and after I do all that, I'll text you and I'll be like, hey, dude, so this is what I'm going after in Kansas. I'll let you know how it goes.
So I'm, such a different, breed, I guess, in this space, because I just like to be surprised. I like to have fun. I like to kill stuff, right? But I literally don't care. Like, it's like, if it makes me excited, I think about like all the deer that I've killed, all the deer that I've passed, or like, and I don't like to say passed. I like to say not shot at, because I've shot at a lot of them that were sure things that just didn't work out. So like when I was we should draw Kansas again this year. And like, it's just going to be the first, like for me, it's Pope and Young. I don't have a whole lot of Pope and Youngs on the wall. So, and I want to be able to share that experience. Just like I said, like, you don't remember that deer that Cody shot, but if you drug it out with him and did all that, and I feel like so unselfishly, and maybe this is the way that I rationalize it, but I'm sharing that experience. If I don't shoot this deer, I'm robbing those guys of that experience, and I don't want to do that.
That's a really interesting way to look at it, but I like it and I respect it. So with the whole Alabama thing, I was the only guy in camp to not shoot a buck this year. Now I shot 2 does, so I had a great time, but I had a blast just rolling into camp and Jacob's got a deer or Adam's got a deer or whatever. And, we're retelling the stories. We're throwing steaks on the grill. We're doing this. How'd it happen? Like, that's all absolutely incredible. And you made a good point that I want to bounce back to. That's another thing that I stand by is, if it gets my heart excited, if it gets my heart racing, and I'm out in Kansas or on a trip or wherever I may be, if it gets my heart racing, I'm going to shoot it. You know, and I think that should be everybody's attitude. I don't think what will the internet say should ever come into your mind when you draw back on a deer. I just don't. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
So that's one of the things I was going to ask you too, is like in that circle, if you come rolling into the Lone Wolf Custom Gear camp with a 6-pointer, that's just like the coolest story. You know, like I had to shoot him, he was going to run me over. You know, whatever. Like how would that be received? Because I was thinking about it, and like I'm sure that they do, but I'm like, I just don't hear about. You know, you don't ever see the grip and grins or like the Lone Wolf Custom Gear just stacking the does, you know. So the circle that you run in is an interesting, like, mind trip, I would imagine, every time you go into the woods, even though you say you don't care what the internet says, right?
Yeah. Well, and so here's what I will tell you, right? Let's play this out. Let's say you roll out to the Ohio show, okay? And you bring a 6-pointer that goes 90 inches, and you got a great story for it. You know, your grandfather was there. He passed away the week after, whatever it may be. Okay. What I can tell you is the people involved with the company, myself, Cody, the Hunter Podcast guys, Zach Robb, Ben Simon, the people that actually work within the company, we will be ecstatic. We'll be all ears. We're going to be staring at you. Like, we want to know all of the details of this story. Other individuals I can't speak to, but I know that the group that I run with, the guys that I run with, the people that work internally at Custom Gear will be nothing but excited to hear about this story and you know, go from there. We've had multiple people that will roll through. They won't bring the actual heads, but they'll show us photos and things like that. And it's, you know, a spike or a fork or whatever. But the reason they're so excited is because of the fact that they got a Custom Gear stand, or they bought our sticks or whatever it may be. And because of that, they were able to be more mobile. They were able to get in, and this is their first buck ever, or it's their first buck with a bow, or it's, you know, just a really cool story. They got in, they were 10 feet up in a cedar thicket, tucked in, had one shooting window, and they're just overly ecstatic. We're going to be just as excited for you as anything else. You know, you mentioned the social side of a lot of the stuff we post and things like that. There's not a whole lot of people stacking does, and there's, you know, there's all these big deer and stuff like that. From a social media side of things, right? My job is to make the company look as good as possible on the social side of things. Well, one thing people love on social media is big deer, you know? And so that plays into the factor as well. You know, my job is to show that I feel we have the best products and things like that, and also tell amazing stories. I'm sure you've seen, you know, I've started the series Trophy Room, where it allows individuals that use our gear to tell their story, their success story, and things like that. So that definitely plays a factor into things as well. But yeah, so I mean, that's what I'll refer back to. Those of us that are involved with Custom Gear, we will want to hear every detail of that story. As for other individuals via social media or things like that, I can't speak to those guys. You and I know each other on a real life level. I want nothing but positivity. I got no room for negativity. There's no place for it. There's enough negativity in the world. Deer hunting and camaraderie shouldn't be one of them.
Sure. Yeah. And I will echo that sentiment 100%, that AJ is one of the most positive and, you know, I don't know, like, good things happen to good people. Yeah. And he's able to like manifest a lot of things. And you can see from the seat that he's sitting in that he's taken full advantage of all these doors he's stepped through and looked around. So we haven't done this in a while, but I'm going to ask you, just because we talked about a bunch of bows and things like that. Like, what's your bow setup, and then what's your mobile hunting setup, since you're got access to the latest and greatest?
Yeah. So my bow setup right now is the Bear Persist. That was last year's flagship model. A lot of people don't realize, but Bear actually does make a flagship top of the line bow to go and compete with those other individuals like Matthews and Hoyt and things like that. I love it. I've now shot Bear for 4 years. It's so far, this one is without a doubt my absolute favorite. Draw cycle's crazy smooth, super easy to adjust. And then moving on to the sight, I'm actually using a dialed proof. I bought the dialed Arxos, fell in love with the company, became friends with Taylor and Scott and the rest of the crew. I think those guys are also doing some really cool things. 100% made in the U.S. They're a small business. I believe they're based out of Minnesota. I could be wrong, but I think it's Minnesota. But yeah, I like the design with it, and the selling point to me, and I know I'm going to butcher these numbers because Taylor always corrects me, but I believe the most common, or the amount of pieces in a sight before dialed came along, averaged like 150, 152 components. The dialed side, I believe, is something like 95 to 100. And I'm a big believer that the less there is, the less that can go wrong. It's very basic, got the big dial on the side. It's got the angle adjustment. So I love that. And then all of my other accessories on my bow are actually Trophy Ridge. A lot of people don't know, but Trophy Ridge is a sub-brand of Bear Archery. And they make incredibly affordable, well-built gear. So I'm running the first time ever, actually. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the Trophy Ridge limb-driven rest. And I really like it. First time I've ever run a limb-driven rest, but it's served me very, very well. The Hitman stabilizers, basic set of stabilizers, 10 and 8, I believe. And then the real thing for me, and I'll tell everybody this, it's the Trophy Ridge Versa quiver. And it has, so there's the Hex Light and the Versa Light quiver, and it actually has a built-in 3 green light off the top. I never wear my headlamp going in or coming out of a hunt. It has made things so much easier just because I've got it attached. The way you carry your bow, it's pointed forward anyways. And so I can just pop that green light on, get my bearings, and finish up what I'm doing. So I love that quiver. And then arrows I'm actually running some Vector or Method arrows. So still love those guys. They're no longer a company anymore. They're making some adjustments and changes. Before that, I ran Easton Axis Long Range, which is actually what I'm going to be putting as my tack arrow. And then I run Iron Will single bevel broadheads. For my mobile hunting setup, I am a huge believer in I will sacrifice comfort for mobility. And so not to say that the 0.5 is uncomfortable, but it is our smallest tree stand that we make. So it's designed to be the public land stand, comes in at like 5.5 pounds bare. Fantastic stand. What I did was I changed out the seat, though. The seat was way too small for me. So all of our stuff is designed to be fully customizable. So I put our medium seat on the 0.5 tree stand, and then I'm running our original 14-inch double steps with 2 cable aiders off the bottom. Sidekick bow holder, which is our bow holder that actually attaches to every tree stand on the market. And it makes sure that if I'm hunting public land, I can be legal, since most public land, you're not allowed to use screw-in bow hooks. So I just always like having that as my fallback option. But yeah, that's that's my bow setup and my current mobile hunting setup. I will tell you that the one thing I'm going to change this year is I'm actually going to get our micro doubles, which are less than a pound, 14-inch steps. So it's the same length, but it's less than a pound, extremely lightweight, and it packs down to be about an inch thick, which is insane.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I've done some like side-by-side testing on them and stuff like that, and the standoff on those doubles, the original doubles, I haven't messed with the micros, was just a little bit too, I don't know, rudimentary for me. I know they lock onto the tree and everything like that, and we've looked at the height and everything, but I'd love a fixed double step, and I know a lot of guys who have really enjoyed those original doubles.
Yeah.
But I don't have any experience with the micros. It was funny because you're like, oh, very affordable, stabilizers and quivers and stuff like that, and then you're like the other side of it.
Yep. I'm both sides to every coin, and I'll never lie to anybody, right? Going back to the tack thing, when I roll into the gas station and someone and their kid is gawking at the truck because I still have the wrap and the tent and everything on it, my first thing is, hey, I don't like lying to people. Like, I was very fortunate. I won this, so make no mistake. I'm extremely fortunate with what I have and how I'm able to hunt, because it's a byproduct of working in the industry and things like that. So one could argue, oh, he's just lucky because he works in the space, so he gets this stuff. But one could also argue that he's worked to get to this position. A lot of people don't realize that I paid for that 0.5 tree stand. And so going forward, it's one of those things where I always try to be even keeled or level headed when explaining stuff to people, when explaining, do I necessarily think that someone needs to go buy a $4,000 bow setup or a $3,000 bow setup if it's their second year hunting? No, not at all. Do I think it'll help? Do I think there's technological advancements? Absolutely. But you want to make sure in any industry that you fall in love with it, then you make the necessary investments. So that's something that I always try to keep at the forefront is, I'm using extremely affordable accessories. I'm also using the top of the line premium stuff. And so I try to stay level headed through all of that.
Yeah. And I think you're doing a really great job with that. So if people have questions or anything, or if they have say like a trophy room submission, maybe they're that guy that it actually was, they bought this stuff, went out there and they were actually able to kill this deer or anything like that. Like, how do they get a hold of you? Where can they do any of that stuff?
Yeah, no, the easiest way to get a hold of me is I'm most active on Instagram. It's at _Coffee Viking. I always got to check myself. Some people don't say the, so it's the _Coffee Viking on Instagram. I'm most active there. If you can spell my last name right, I will add you as a friend on Facebook as well. Facebook is a little more family oriented and stuff like that, but it's AJ Kazimierzak on Facebook. And then, if you have submissions for Trophy Room, that's simply AJ at lonewolfcustomgear.com for my email.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time, and it was fun catching up.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate you having me on. A ton of good questions.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man.
Gear up for the hunt and learn from the best with Deer and Deer Hunting Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV. Tune in every week for expert hunting tips and unforgettable moments in the field. Waypoint TV, your destination for outdoor entertainment. From dawn to dusk and every moment in between, Captain Justin Leake and Meredith McCord have an exciting adventure waiting in the water. Catch Chasing the Sun, Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV. Waypoint TV, your destination for outdoor entertainment.